doing the round the day after is something I've done. It's a small and thankless club. But what happened before the withdrawal from the race and the speech today with Mayor Bloomberg?
Well, listen, a few things. One, I'm really excited to get the weekend off. I haven't had a day off since Christmas, and so I don't find this that tough.
This is the best. I've taken post-defeat vacations.
In some ways, I'm looser now than I've been in a few months. So careful with the questions you ask. I think, listen, I think the people, I think the real question is, boy, when you saw what we saw last night, where were you? The truth is, we saw it 3 days ago. We've put together a data operation that is going out nightly. I think most other campaigns are finding out what they find out from 538 or other websites. We saw the shift.
Steve Kornacki.
Steve Kornacki. No, Steve might have better sources. But listen, the shift was real. And it started right after South Carolina. And quite frankly, it got to a point that if you had a poll, we had polls, we had 3 different tracks running, that if it was more than 12 hours old, it wasn't worth anything anymore because the trend was still continuing. And so, the numbers that I saw or we predicted sort of, maybe 12 hours out were that Joe was going to and Bernie were going to get over 500 delegates. And it was really an unprecedented rise. I don't think, and you guys have talked about this, that anyone saw this a week ago.
Yeah.
And the truth is, even with the data that we had, we didn't see it a week ago, but we certainly saw it a few days ago. And it's dramatic and it's real. It's going to be very important for the vice president now to build upon that. I think, you were talking about this a little bit on the panel before. I actually think you feel pretty good when things are going well.
It's dangerous, though. It's a dangerous time.
But this primary is not over, and the party has a real incentive to end it early. To see real consolidation. I don't think that Bernie was ever running to be president of more than 30% of the party, but it's a really dedicated committee, 30%. And unless there are a few months to get ready for what is going to be a razor-thin general election, that general election is going to be vastly closer than we as Democrats want it to be.
What role does Mike want to play in the general?
I think it's good to take a step back. Listen, Mike thought he'd sit on the sidelines. Mike worked really hard to flip the House. A lot of the folks around Trump blame Mike for Nancy Pelosi and blame him for impeachment because of the 24 races that we helped win in the last cycle. Mike was going to do that from the sidelines, and Mike basically said, hey, listen, this is too important. I'm not going to sit on the sidelines, but I'm in this till the finish. And Mike has been very successful. He spent nothing but his own money. He's brought present company, excluded brilliant people around him. His view from the start was either I'm going to be the nominee or I'm going to be the most important person in helping this get across the line because it's that important to me. And this stool always had 3 legs, right? It had Mike as the nominee. It had the idea that we were going to start preparing battleground operations in the 6 states, probably 7 now that you need them. And we were going to really stand up a data operation that we think can compete with the Republican side. Hey, listen, Mike now is standing on 2 legs. But he's definitely standing, and I think it's going to be really important what he does going forward.
So I want to ask you about the data operation. Ken Mehlman sort of pioneered the campaign technology and marrying those things together in ways that David Plouffe built on. And the real innovation that gets underreported really is sort of the marrying up of the best technologies with the best ways to reach voters and get a message out. It is, I don't think it's a secret that your campaign is the one that has done that with great effect. What are you going to do with the infrastructure?
Well, listen, Mike set up an operation that was set up as a vendor so that it could help, certainly our campaign as it has, so it could set up campaigns to help elect Democrats to the House, so it could help other Democratic-aligned organizations and compete. Ken and David are both friends, as you know, and friends of yours. It was definitely different then. What President Trump was able to do is really like nothing we've ever seen in any other campaign before.
Explain it. You mean with Facebook and...
2 reasons. One, the Republicans, let me take a step back. Republicans really thought that they were going to start getting wiped out this decade. And so they invested in an unprecedented effort to combine data and create a combined voter trust on the Democratic side, Republican side. On the Democratic side, we had nothing like that. President Trump gets the nomination. He's handed this voter file, which is at least 5, 6, 7 years ahead of where we were as a Democratic Party. And at the same time, he has nothing else. Literally nothing else, right? There's no unions, there's no other support, there's no Republican organizations. So he goes fully digital at a time that digital and social is going straight up. Mm-hmm. And he marries those 2 things together. And listen, I don't want to be a critic of the 16 campaign, but it was run with like walk lists and union organization in ways, in ways that the Republican field, as we looked at it about a year or 2 ago, were literally 3 cycles ahead, 12 years. And in terms of digital, 12 years is a generation.
I know exactly, and I think a lot of our viewers are pretty savvy about all this, and I think, and that's why I really want to understand what happens to all this. I mean, there are laws that would prevent you from just giving it to Joe Biden. Will you create a super PAC?
So, like I said, Mike has set up his effort as a vendor. And so a vendor can work with candidates, a vendor can work with the party, a vendor can work with Democratic aligned groups like Emily's
A vendor
List.
can work with campaign finance lawyers to make sure you don't run a felony.
No, vendors have good campaign finance lawyers.
Let me ask you a personal question. You're one of the smartest political minds in the country, your modesty aside. I mean, when you look back at this, do you look at that first debate as a point where where defeat was put in motion, or was it really just Biden's rise was something that nobody sort of gamed out?
Yeah, I am not going to go on air now and argue that the debate was necessarily my personal highlight of the campaign. I think what we saw, though, in the last 36 hours would have swamped any campaign that we would have run. Listen, Mike got into this one again off the sidelines, but there was the idea that Vice President Biden may not have a campaign which can go the distance. Mm-hmm. And so our campaign was always built upon the idea that you would have a Bloomberg, Sanders, Warren campaign. That is clearly not what we faced. Vice President Biden is right squarely in Mike's lane. I would say, ultimately, even we were by getting out 90% of the votes that we ultimately did get, or any votes that we would have gotten any other part of this race, would certainly go to the vice president. And so his ascendancy really took our campaign, out of any lane that we otherwise would have been in. Mm-hmm.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.